I really struggle with, and I've been trying to read up on this to understand where, where the social science is and how it understands for, can people just unpack different emotions that they have and solve different ways that they feel about the world or themselves, and then effectively start making new decisions, after they've gone through that? Or is part of it developing a discipline or something that they have to slowly start also making new decisions, so to get those neural pathways going, so then eventually they become a person that does different things, either with it's like,
Hmm.
emotional eating, or if it's like not doing the work you have to do and procrastinating, like all these different things. I really wonder if you have any feedback, if you think, like, does it really just come from an emotional worldview base, or on some level do we just have to slowly start making different decisions and then turn that into who we are?
Yeah, I think it can be both. I mean, and I think that this isn't an either or. Um, it's interesting talking about psychotherapy because there's so many different schools of psychotherapy that folks from different schools would say different things. So,
Oh,
I should
fair.
sort of, I should sort of flag that and say that I don't speak for everyone. And if they're a therapist listening, they'll be pulling their hair out and be like, no, you should do this or you shouldn't do that or whatever. Um, so in a lot of ways, I think that it depends. Oftentimes, therapists will be sort of doing both simultaneously. So
Mm,
maybe trying to unpack and then sort of change some of those more core ways of seeing the self and the world, while also having people, doing things consistent with their values and finding what those are. Um, yeah, so I think that both can be happening. I, I think that therapy does give people, or hopefully give people the opportunity to start to hmm, let me start over again on that one. One of the really facilitative aspects of psychotherapy is this aspect of clarity, right? So like oftentimes we're going through life and we sort of have the blinders on, or we're just sort of going and we keep bumping again up against the same walls over and over again.
sure.
And one of the reasons that we do that is we just have a lack of clarity on like what's going on. And I always say in terms of talking about the active ingredients of psychotherapy, it's like when you have a crappy day or you're struggling with something and you sit down and you talk to a significant other or a friend or whatever, and you sort of just like talk about it. A lot of times in talking about it, just sort of, what if this is my, you'll realize like, oh, that's what happened. Oh, that's what's getting in the way. Oh, that's why keep seeing things in this way, which is, and just in
Mm,
like unpacking it, it's like the solution or the way forward becomes obvious. Right. And so like this is
right.
one of the things that psychotherapists do across approaches is they help folks to unpack it. And then oftentimes just in that unpacking, the client will see, oh, this is what, so like the solution just sort of like becomes apparent once you really understand the problem.
Right. Well, I'm a verbal processor as well. So
Right.
if I'm just telling someone about something and I say something else and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even realize I felt like that. I've had that
Right.
moment so many times where, like, that's why there was someone I spoke to for, I think, for a better part of a year, a while ago, and she wasn't a, I think she did something else. She wasn't like a licensed therapist. I met her
Hmm.
through, I think she did some energy stuff that I was introduced to someone, and I was like, this doesn't seem like my speed, but let me try to talk to this person.
Hmm.
But there was something about this woman that I think had a similar background to mine, and she'd worked with a lot of people, and she was just like an expert level listener.
Hmm.
So after like 4 or 5 sessions, she'd be asking you questions for stuff that you said in the first session,
Hmm.
and you're like, oh yeah, I did say that, and it just made you feel so taken care of in
Hmm.
those environments, that I think it allowed me, at least, to be able to kind of try to discuss things more and feel like, okay, someone actually is listening to me, and if I say something that they need to call me on my own nonsense, then they're going to do that because they're
Hmm.
listening to everything that I've said. Because I think as human beings we can be quite hypocritical and contradictory, and not even really know it. Like, there's so many
Hmm.
blind spots we have. So I think I I think that's why I love the idea that just talking to someone, that it doesn't have to be a therapist, is better than not talking to anyone and trying to go this alone, or just staying with ChatGPT, or however the world's evolving. I think if we at least have someone in our lives to talk to, it takes a lot of steam off the kettle, if you will.
That's right. Yeah. And I think so. One of the things I hear you saying in your in working with that woman. So one of the things is she gave you that sense of sort of belonging and connection. So you felt you had trust in her. You said you felt taken care of, right? So in that relationship, am I framing this correctly?
Yeah. I had to think about it. Maybe taken care of is correct. I mean, I wouldn't have thought about it like that. I think it would just been like that someone is present with me in this journey, and I guess taken
Mhm.
care of is as good a way to put it as any.
Well, you could say you have a co-pilot, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
have somebody
sure.
who's there with you, but it sounds like, so you have a sense of trust in this person. And then also she was able to link things and bring things together that you hadn't really done in certain ways, right? So she was able to help to make some connections, which was help you to clarify, to help you understand better your experience of things, right? She was able to connect things that you weren't necessarily connecting. And then you went, oh shit, maybe she has a point. Oh, I hadn't really thought about it that way. Do I really feel like that? Right. So all of that is part of you clarifying, right? Just like what's going on. And then once you have that
Yeah,
clarity, you can like do something with it. And I think though that getting back to that, having that, this is one of the really important things about psychotherapy that's sort of one of the most robust findings is like, over decades, is the importance of having that therapeutic alliance. And it sounds like you really had that with this woman, which is that real sense of like trust bond connection, right? You guys are on the
definitely.
same page. She's working with you to facilitate something. And so that's super important. And sort of getting back to what we were talking about earlier, when you as a friend or your friend who was a therapist earlier in her career, that like, that maybe that, sometimes if you're just rushing to problem solve or move on to the next day or whatever, or make the bad feelings go away, then you don't have that sense of connection. And so it
Right.
is super important when working with a therapist that you do feel that level of trust of like, they're in this with me. She's a co-pilot with me. That doesn't mean she's perfect. Um,
Sure.
but she's really with me in trying to, uh, work on whatever it is that I want to work on.